Hello students. Today I'm going to talk about mm, an important age or era or period in the history of English literature, that is known as the Age of Transition. The period of the 18th century mainly, um, that is somewhere between 1740 to 1798, is known as the Age of Transition. Transition means change from one phase. It's a phase. It's a passing phase between two uh, two periods or two ages as far as the history of English literature is concerned. So this period of say 40-45 years belonging to the latter half of the 18th century is known as the Age of Transition. And it was a transition, it was a change from the age of classicism. It is also known as the Augustan period. It is also known as the neoclassical age in the history of English literature, when the stalwarts, when the major figures like Alexander Pope, uh, like Johnson, they were writing, Samuel Johnson. So they were the followers of the classical writers, classical poets, Greek and Roman poets like Virgil, like Horace. So these are the um, these are the major figures of the Augustan age or the neoclassical age. It is also known as the age of reason. And uh, as in the earlier video, I mentioned the age of romanticism begins in the year 1798 with the publication of lyrical ballads. The small collection of poems written by S.T. Coleridge and William Wordsworth. So it was the proper beginning of the age of romanticism. Now, this age that we are talking about today, that is the age of transition, falls between these two great movements in the history of English literature. On the one hand, it is the neoclassical age or the age of reason or the Augustan age, and on the other, it is again the golden period in the history of English literature after Elizabethan one, that is the age of romanticism. So, in between these two, we have a phase of change from one situation, from one literature, one movement to another, that is romanticism. So in between we have this age of transition, and there are the poets like William Blake, Thomas Gray, Robert Burns, which who are known as the poets of the age of transition, or they are the precursors. They come before the great romantic writers, poets like Wordsworth and Shelley and Coleridge and John Keats. So, and what was this transition? What was this change from one phase to another? In the age of classicism or Augustan age or neoclassical age, the focus was on the rules by the great masters of the classical Greek and Roman literature. The focus was on the high style of poetry. In derogatory terms, it was also known as the drawing room poetry. So the poets, they were following the rules laid by the Greek and the Roman masters. So it was as if poetry was confined to the rules. And exactly opposite of this happened when lyrical ballads was published. When Wordsworth proposed a new theory of poetry in the preface that he wrote to the lyrical ballads. And he states, there he emphasizes the fact that is his theory of poetry, that the day-to-day language of the common people can be used for writing poetry. Not only this, the common incidents, the common people, the villagers, for example, a girl working in a field, or a common man can be the subject of a poem. His or her life can be the theme of a poem. And from drawing room, from the confinement of the rules, poetry was led into nature more and more near nature. So this was a transition, and that started with um, the publication of poems known as the Seasons by James Thomson uh, in the year 1730. Okay, and after that we find there are the poets like Thomas Gray, like William Blake, like Burns. They are focusing more and more on nature as well as the individualism, because individual, a person, became the very center of poetry in the age of romanticism. And this process started somewhere in 1730 with the publication of the Seasons. Okay, and later on, this movement progressed and it came to be known as the age of transition. Nowadays, Thomas Gray is considered as the major figure of the age of transition, and his Elegy. Elegy is a poem of lament. Okay, Elegy is a poem in which the poet, the speaker, laments the death of his or her near and dear one. So it is again a kind of lyrical poem. That is, it's a personal poem. It is the expression of the personal feelings of the poet over the loss of somebody near and dear. So that is the most important feature of Elegy as a poem. In another special video, I am going to talk about Elegy as a form of poetry, or ode as a form of poetry, sonnet or ballad, various types of lyrical poems. So Elegy is a poem of lament, is a poem about death, is a poem about some serious theme, not necessarily every time about death, but it is about some serious aspect of life. It is about some serious philosophy of life. So that is Elegy. And Thomas Gray wrote a, a very beautiful kind of elegy, that is Elegy written in a country churchyard in the year 1751. Okay, and that is considered as the best example of the poetry of the age of transition. So in another video, I'm going to discuss in detail, I'm going to analyze Elegy written in a country churchyard. So for the time being, you have to keep in mind that this poet Thomas Gray belongs to the age of transition, which was the phase of change from classicism in literature to the romanticism, in the history of English literature. So in between these two great movements falls this age, this era, though short, and it is known as the age of transition. Thomas Gray belongs to that era, and we are going to discuss a very beautiful poem by this poet Thomas Gray, that is Elegy written in a country churchyard, which was written published in the year 1751, that is the middle of the 18th century. Thank you.